This is Infection, the survival podcast, recorded live on Tuesday, February 15th, 2022, episode 370. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. Welcome to another edition of Infection, the survival podcast. Infection is your source for the latest information on survival video games. My name is Nick Craig. You can check out my social media profiles by visiting nickcraig.com. If you want to check out my daily political antics, you can check out nickcraig.com and also check out the Wilmington's Morning News podcast wherever your podcasts are available. But of course, I cannot embark on this adventure alone into the wonderful world of survival video games with a very survival background. Brian Aldridge. Hey, Brian, how are you?
I am doing well. Hello. And first of all, let's get some contact information out of the way. If you want to find me, at Brian Aldridge on Gab, Parler, Getter, and then probably whatever else we get in the future here. We'll see. I'm sure we're going to have a couple of different social media platforms cycling through in the next 3
Why don't we create our own?
Hey, we might as well just do our own.
Infection Social.
We'll figure. Infect your friends. I mean, that's the first.
Yeah.
How can you not like it?
Yeah.
Of course, if you want to find my blog, biteoftech.com. But first, go to our website. If you go to infectionpodcast.com, on the right-hand side, you can join our server on Discord. If you're interested in playing Ark, for instance, we got, we can think 9 Ark servers running right now, or 10. We're something like that. A lot going on with that. And then people can post news topics. Perhaps there's a game we're not covering, something that you think we should be covering. Jump on there and submit that link into the news channel, because then we review that before the live show, and you can get some of those things inserted into the show notes. If you want to watch the show, you can do that through Twitch, YouTube, BitChute, and DLive. We got the audio forms at the lower right-hand side. So whatever platform device you want to listen to the show on, you can do that. There's lots of choices there. And most of them, I can tell, is all free. And then if you're going to listen, I encourage you to follow along in the show notes, because we've got a lot of links for videos, for articles, maybe PDFs of reference material, different things that you can access there. Everything that we discuss on the show that we reference, we put a link to in there. So if you are listening, that's a really helpful use. If you want to support the show, just go to the top. We got a support tab, or you go to infectionpodcast.com/support. People get Prime Gaming subs, Humble Bundles, Amazon Prime, all kinds of different things that you can do. Subscribe Star. If you're interested in supporting the show, to where next time we go to the convention and do all those things, we use those funds for a place to stay and equipment. So looking forward to maybe someday being in person again.
Yeah.
Outside of our own personal time.
Yeah. If we're not run out of wherever that might end up being, which the cat's still out of the bag on that. Thank you, Brian. As always. Well, here is an interesting way to start off the program. A game that really, I think, Brian, as you know,
much from it.
I am not somebody to brag. I am not somebody to sit here and toot my own horn. I am never somebody to sit here and pat myself on the back for the great job that I do day in and day out. Never have I ever been somebody to do that. But in the case of Cyberpunk 2077. Putting all the jokes aside, I think you and I pretty much nailed Cyberpunk 2077 head on. I think there was this
pretty quickly into it.
This notion that it was going to be Grand Theft Auto, it was going to be Witcher. It's by the same people that do Witcher. It's going to be Skyrim. It's going to be Red Dead. It's going to be this kind of game. And now I will say there are a lot of people that have really enjoyed Cyberpunk 2077. But for a lot of other people, it has not been quite the experience that they were hoping for, as the game was rampant with bugs and issues. It's been out over a year. It came out December 10th, 2020. That's when it first launched. So it has now been out just over a year. And they have finally, after 12, 13, almost 14 months at this point, finally released a big update in which they're calling it the next gen update. Of course, some of that coming in correlation with the next generation consoles, but this seems like it might be potentially the adrenaline boost that a game like this really needs, because looking at the player count prior to Well, really, today when this came out, this game was struggling to pull 10,000 people playing it. Now, of course, this is on just SteamDB. The game is available on other platforms as well. But a game, when you look at the top 10 games that are being played on Steam right now, you're looking at games like Grand Theft Auto, which is from 2011, that has 60,000 people playing it as we speak. So that's the kind of competition that we're talking to, or excuse me, the competition that we're referencing. They did release a video in conjunction with this massive update. It's called the Next Gen Update Launch Trailer. So I think we start off with that, and we will discuss right after this.
Night City? Man, I fucking love it. I was born here, I live here, and downright refuse to die anywhere else. What the?
170 people were killed in a cyber psycho attack shocks Red Springs.
The biggest crisis on the NC.
This is N54 News.
Listen, kid. If there's one thing I can tell you about this city, you either love it or want to burn it. No middle ground. Coming here is a crash course in the survival of the fittest, the greediest, the most vile, and most corrupted gonks.
See this badge? That means I can do whatever the fuck I want.
But behind the blinding lights and all of the rot, you might just discover a beauty that can only be found here. Night City is full of love, friendships, and family ties that run deeper than any cyberware eddies can buy.
Zapper dumples and filth. In some ways, Night City never changes.
City of dreams, city of gang. You don't believe in no fate. I might just dig up your grave. Stepping up here with a gang. City of dreams, city of gang, 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 gang. City of dreams, live in your grave. You live in your grave. City of dreams, city of gang, 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 gang. City of dreams, live in your grave. You live in your grave. City of dreams, city of.
It's the city's promise. Not everyone's buying it. But if you want to know for sure, you just need to try it for yourself.
So, not much of a gameplay trailer, more as essentially a full video game launch trailer, coming in at just about 2.5 minutes for that. I just pulled up my Steam library so I could look at this. The last time I played Cyberpunk 2077 was January the 13th, 2021. So at this point, it's been 13 months since I've played it. I did log just over 24 hours in the game. Obviously, I did not finish it. I don't believe I came anywhere near finishing it. But I just seemed like
probably because you're doing a lot of side quests. Like I finished one of the storylines of it, and it felt like it felt pretty short because I wasn't expecting just to hit it at that point. Like I was expecting more. And almost like, oh, game over. You know, roll credits. Here's things that could have possibly happened if you talked to more people, and it lists them off.
I do quickly want to thank our friend Big Woody Sauce and UGX Vibe, both for hitting us up with the resubscriptions here on Twitch. Thank you very much, gentlemen. And Brian, I'm trying to think of from my vantage point. I think I just kind of lost interest. I guess maybe.
Well, there were a lot of bugs back then. That's part of it. Because things
there were a lot
operating
of
how you expect. The AI was really messed up. Part of what I love about Rockstar and how they did GTA is you go into the city and you can just start doing stuff and it's fun. It doesn't break everything. Like it's maybe traffic will get messed up, but the game continues. Cops will start chasing you. You can kind of play that meta and just run on and do something else later. With this, you start messing with stuff and like the place just starts falling apart, or did then. Cars start flying. AI starts whacking out and doing things. It was just a mess. And I think now, do you want to start going over some of the things that they corrected in this? Because things that should have been, I think, day one that would have made this the game that people expected. And, well, maybe not expected. I think people were expecting something beyond Rockstar in
Well,
some people's minds. But I think it gave them
well,
this is a realistic game.
hold on. I want you to reiterate your statement here. People were expecting something based off of the expectations that CD Projekt Red, I think, set.
Yeah.
Not all of it is not all of it is on them. Not all of it is on them. There is no question about it. There is some, we've covered this a lot, some fault at the hands of the community for overhyping the game. But I remember back to PAX West in 2019 when this game was supposed to come out, when they last minute canceled their showing for the game. Yeah, and they had a big party planned and everything of that nature. I still have the yellow Cyberpunk 2077 cups they were giving out, but this was expected to be the game of 2020. This was going to be the game of all games. And looking at the player count right now and looking at just kind of the quick, I mean, you're talking about, at least just from my vantage point, Brian, the game came out on December 10th. By January the 14th, I was already done playing it. Now, I did log a day worth of playtime in that period, but I should be able to be hooked to a game and should want to be hooked to a game like Cyberpunk for more than a month.
This open world style where you can go and pick up quests. I mean, look at how much later people are playing GTA 5. People are still playing it to this day, every day. And I think that's what they're aiming for. I think that some of these changes are with that in mind. Remember, they're still talking about doing multiplayer. I think that's the ultimate goal, because one thing that they do, I think, a little bit better is how they allow modding. I think that the modding in here is more seamless than it is definitely with GTA. And so I think that for here, where they embrace modding, and with GTA where they don't, I think that they have an opportunity here to really create just a system, kind of like what they did with Witcher and things like that. They don't have to continue putting out a lot of updates for Witcher, their Witcher game, because modders are constantly adding new quests, adding new characters, adding graphics improvements, all of those things, because they set up a healthy back-end system that people could mod on. I think that's where they're going with this. And I hope that eventually they'll maybe go to an online version of that where you can create, because I think this game is for role players. Because that's what the GTA community is. It's a bunch of role players. It's not people playing GTA Online. The people that are really playing that game are the ones playing on roleplay.
And I do think that is the thing. But unfortunately, and let's be clear, when Grand Theft Auto first came out, the multiplayer was not immediately available. Same thing with Red Dead Redemption, and same thing with Cyberpunk. My only concern here, Brian, is we are now 14 months into the launch of this game. We just received a big content update. Presumably, they've been working on these changes. And by the way, if we remember when we used to do this in the old H1Z1 days, we'd go through and see how long it would take, how many pages this would be to print out. Well, Brian just did that. This would be an 18-page printout, plus or minus a couple of pages for the footer and the header. There is a copious amount of stuff in here. I would guess the multiplayer is probably not anywhere near a level where it needs to be.
No.
And I can tell you this, and I do want to get into some of these big changes, but before, if they don't really buckle down and do this multiplayer right, and the multiplayer release is just as shitty as the full game release, this game is going to be dead. If it's not already dead. I'm not sure that it can necessarily be revitalized anyway. But if they do
I think if they have modding right, other people will save it. They won't save it. People will continue playing it and modding it and doing things as long as they keep the game running. If they put enough modding in, there is a lot of modding support for this already. But even if they let it go, if they had some sort of multiplayer thing that kind of barely worked, modders would probably fix it, and they'd probably continue playing some crazy game modes on it. I don't know. I think that there's an opportunity if they just take it, keep moving forward with this. They've taken some time to really put in work without sitting there constantly promising things to people. That's what I hate, is when you get a company, and I think this is where they kind of, as you said, stepped in a little bit early on, promising a little bit too much, and then people took it and ran with it and applied every single version of what they thought, just like with No Man's Sky. I mean, it was the exact, they promised, overpromised, and then people just took everything and plus added to it, everything they wanted. And so I think here, now people have a realistic expectation of this. They've added RT. Well, let's start going into some of this.
Yeah,
because there's things that weren't included in the original game that should have been on a AAA title, but I don't think this was released as, and I think you agree, was not released as a AAA title.
No,
it
was
wasn't
definitely not
on the level of AAA.
It was definitely not completed. By the way, if you're an audio listener, we'll have a link to this in our show notes on infectionpodcast.com. They put out a nice little TLDR document. I'm going to zoom in on this so that we can actually take a look at exactly what we're seeing. So where do we want to start off here for the first row?
Let's go and go from the top down. So
okay,
new weapons. I'm going to look at this chart really quick. So new weapons we've got on all platforms. This is really showing you his Stadia and Xbox One and PS4 all kind of have these different release dates. So you can see where ray traced on the Xbox Series X and the PS5, that's now supported for visual improvements. The Xbox Series and the PS5 will get those. Some of the old consoles aren't going to be getting some of these features, but I think that's what they need to do. They need to start leaving that behind because you're holding back the game visually. And eventually people aren't going to have these old consoles anymore, and they're going to be stuck in an old engine. So I think this patch is really good. Let's look at some of the things. First of all, the next gen exclusive are those ray traced. They also implemented some native achievement support that next gen consoles use for this. They have a performance mode which will make sure that all the settings get it to where you can do 60 FPS with dynamic 4K scaling. So it's going to make it to where if you have a 4K screen, it will upscale or do whatever to make sure that you hit 60 frames per second. And then they've added the ray tracing mode into this. I have both Xboxes here. I'm going to definitely try it on the one with ray tracing and see if I visually see a huge difference. I've not been impressed with anything I've really seen on the new Xboxes with ray tracing. It's just not like, where you'd expect to be like a night and day difference. I'm hoping this will be. Another thing they're going to do is apartments. You can rent apartments with a one-time fee, and they've got 4 different ones. And then you can start customizing V's apartment in that building. So there's quite a few things that I think that's kind of more towards that role playing, getting places to stay, because that's what they use in role play, getting people to stay in the game and run around and do things. They have a perfect example is GTA. Then appearance customization, they're adding some more things for that. Go ahead.
I want to stop on the apartment thing real quick. That would have been something so easy to do day one.
To implement, they have a huge city.
Yeah, and
why not have more places to stay? Yeah. And
so there was literally your I think it was the apartment. Yeah, the apartment that you wake up in every time you log into the game. I think when you log in, you wake up. I don't remember exactly. It's been literally a year. But the apartment you wake up in with the bed in the corner, they now have 4 different apartments. One in the Watson district, one in Westbrook, one in Haywood, and one in City Center. They're not all that expensive. The Watson one is 5,000 in-game currency. But this seems to be such a simple thing to do on day one. Why was this not done? And I'm not going to sit here and I don't want a Monday morning quarterback, but this is just it's stupid bullshit that could have been done when I paid $60 for a title that had been in development for over 5 and serious development for over 5 years.
This is why people need to quit. They need to stop announcing these titles before and wait until do a poll like GTA. You want to know why we don't have all these issues with GTA? Because they don't announce it to the things about done.
We don't know anything about GTA.
We don't know anything about. They're not promising a single thing. They're not giving us any hints. The only things we see are random leaks that come out here and there.
And then they're like,
here's the game. Yeah. Oh, yeah. And they're like, here's the game. You get the game. And you know what? We can't complain because we didn't have any expectations coming into it. All these other companies give you so many expectations. They show you so many screenshots, videos, everything coming up to it. And the videos are nothing like the actual gameplay in this situation on day one. Because you saw the videos and then you'd see screenshots of people showing what was supposed to be the same thing, and faces were all contorted and melting, and I'd see objects floating in the air random places. I think they ran out of time. They didn't get to finish it and bug test, and they've only fixed the major bugs that would make it mostly run. They didn't even get all those. I think this is what, if they would have done it properly and taken the time and not pushed themselves to get it released by a certain day, I bet you this would have been the day one release. I bet you this is their list of things, and that's probably why they're treating it like a day one release with their video.
Here's the thing. Not only was this not done on launch, this game had already been delayed 2 or 3 times ahead of its December 2020 launch. Now, let's be honest, Brian. It obviously appears that they needed a full another year for development. So, part of me wonders.
I think part of it's COVID. I mean, we had COVID, which kind of delayed and caused weird issues. I mean, there was a few things that they could have used as an excuse. But you know what? If you think that you're struggling to develop this because of changes in the environment and what's happening, then say, hey, due to this, just like some other companies did, we're going to delay this until we think it's ready. We'll set an announcement date once we know that we don't have to reset it again. That's what I would say. Quit setting a date, quit changing it. Wait until you know, okay, we're just putting in graphical enhancements. It runs, may not look exactly how we want visually, but you know what? It runs and it doesn't crash and it does all these things. Okay, set the date. Then let's use that to fix as many of the visual glitches as you can, and then continue patching them after release.
Here's an example. I just saw this on Twitter. Here's an example. Left is day one, right is right now. This is a pond that we're looking at, or some sort of water source. When you shoot into the water on day one, nothing happens. There's no ripple. There's no indication you're even hitting the water. It is so disappointing to me that this product on the left was sold for $60. And I don't want to sit here and rehash the show from 14 months ago, but this is such a simple thing. There's water all throughout the game.
I made a system that did this in Unreal Engine that did this identical thing.
This is not a complicated task.
I understand. Well, depending on their engine, how hard they've made it for themselves. It could be a very complicated task.
Yeah,
but whose fault is that? That's their fault for making the engine that complicated.
I don't think
on Unreal Engine you could do that in an afternoon, but you would have to do some work to get it on all the meshes. But you could do something like that in Unreal Engine in an afternoon. Now for them, I don't know how long it would take exactly because I don't know how difficult it is in their environment, but it should have been in there. I just think they ran out of time. I think it was on somebody's list, but you know what? There were things before it that were game breaking that I think they had to do, and all that stuff got left off, and they never got to it before release day. And so you have no water effects, impact effects. You had half the AI wasn't working. I mean, cars were driving into each other and causing mass pileups and flying off the map. I mean, the thing was just a disaster. They should have delayed it, and then I think today people would have viewed it, even though they would have been mad about the delay, like they always are. People would have viewed it so much more in a positive light. I think now, if the thing would have been released 6 months ago, perhaps. Let's give it like that they 6 months ago got it to a state where they felt like it was ready.
Yeah. So let's jump back to this. Let's jump back to this chart real quick. One of the big things on here, Brian, is improved crowd reactions. Now, the last gen consoles are not getting this, but this is something that was always big in GTA and something that was always big in Red Dead Redemption, and Skyrim. The crowd reaction in GTA, when you pull a gun out on the street, just pull it out, don't even shoot it. You have people in the crowd that go, "Oh my god!" and they start running throughout the road. It's that's a big thing. That was not very well done and implemented day one. So that's been updated for all of the systems, of course, including PC, PS5, Xbox Series S and X. Spatial headphone audio is going to be coming to everything now besides the PS4. Various visual quality improvements coming to every system besides the PS4 and Xbox One. And I think you pretty much highlighted everything else. So here's my $1 million question for you, Mr. Brian. Is this enough, or is the damage already done for Cyberpunk 2077? Is it damaged goods? Will people jump back into Night City? Your thoughts?
Okay, so they did add some new quests in here. So they are trying to give incentive, something different to do. I think if they can get it to where they can kind of continuously feed quests and then fix the environment to where it feels like a real city, because there's too many closed doors. When you look at the city from the outside, like the shots they were showing us and we were seeing prior to really playing it, it just seemed like such a huge city. You see the flying craft, for vehicles. I was never able to control one of those. There are no flying cars that I can get into one in a cutscene, but that's about it, right? I just think that if they can get it to where when you go in there, you can run around for 2 hours and the time went by like that. If they can get it with quests and things that happen in real time with crowd reactions and kind of spontaneous things happening and making it feel alive, then yeah, I think so. But when you go in there, if it still just feels like the AI is stupid, most of the buildings are closed, the only places you can really go are places that are your objectives, the buildings you can enter, then it doesn't feel as fun. And I think that that's what people are expecting in this day and age, where, looking at GTA 6 coming out, we're expecting that. We're expecting every door to be openable and every AI to have, some sort of backstory, kind of like what they did with Red Dead Redemption. We didn't get anything near that with this. And so I think that people were expecting that. They got this, but they need to get it to where when people are playing, the the city, because it's such a huge city with so much character, I guess you could say. There's so much they could do with it. There's so many interesting characters. I feel like they just didn't take advantage of giving you that feeling of, I want to go explore. Because what do you really want to explore? It doesn't feel like there's anything secret around the corner in this game.
No, it absolutely does.
With Red Dead Redemption, I felt like it with the new one. Man, I was exploring everything because I would just find things, and then there'd be a whole backstory for that character. I'm watching him.
And here's the thing, though. I think this was the struggle of this type of game. Red Dead Redemption is Wild West Cowboys. There's no sprawling cities. There's no sprawling sky rises. The quote unquote biggest town has got what, a dozen buildings at most that you can interact with. That's not because...
okay, wait. There's one big city that's a southern city in the lower right. That's a pretty big town. Other than that, most of them are. Yeah, there's one like big city in there.
There is
the lower right, but other than that, they're not.
But even that big city, you know, the limit of things to interact with are of course on a limited scope based on the era of the game. In this game, they're trying to essentially make Blade Runner the video game, in which every building is 7,000 stories tall, and it's this big metropolis of this, you know, this future where we have completely embraced technology and it controls every aspect of our life. So visually, that's what it has. That's the look. That's the style of Cyberpunk. That's the Blade Runner style. But that's technically, but that's unrealistic from a technical standpoint. What are you going to do? Develop, you know, 50,000 buildings within this game to it's like you wanted it to. It's expectations versus realities, Brian. You know, you expect the client wants the pretty looking horse, and then it ends up looking like some stupid stick figure when you're all said and done with it. And I think that was the problem is, yes, you have these sprawling skylines. Yes, you have these huge skyscrapers, but it's unrealistic to populate those. So now you run into the situation where you're running through the city, and while, yes, it visually looks cool, nothing does anything. You know, there's a couple of big buildings that you can go into. There's a couple parking decks that you can go into. Some alleys that you can do things in. But just based on the scope and the scale, the game is already like 250 gigs. You know, what are they going to do?
And it decentivizes exploration. That's the issue. It decentivizes exploration because you never feel like there's something secret around the corner, a door you can open, something you can find. The game made it in a way to where you just never feel like that's going to happen. Where I feel like some points they did with Red Dead Redemption, with characters especially.
Big Woody Saw says it's like Star Citizen having to work on server meshing so that every room in every building in every city is a different server. And that's just part of the struggle of a game this expansive. And Star Citizen deals with the same thing, is you can visually do it, but from a practical standpoint of developing a game, you can't, there's not enough people, there's not enough time, unless you're going to do AI generation to populate all of those buildings. And that's what I guess what needs to be done is AI generation in the future.
Exactly. That's what I was going to say. I think that for this type of a world that they were trying to pull off, I mean, to really take full advantage of it, I think you have to do kind of what Star Citizen is doing in some of these other games where you use something like Houdini and you're generating that Matrix one they just showed, that Matrix demo. Remember that city, how each of the interiors were all furnished? That's how you do it. The engine that Cyberpunk is using is just not advanced, and they have to program in every little thing to do it. They're trying to catch up, and that's the problem I've always said since we've been doing the show about private engines inside of companies. When you get distracted or you're between projects, you have long breaks between projects, your engine gets out of date. And they're struggling because there's so many advancements, ray tracing and all these things that they now have to program into their engine that they didn't have to before, just to keep up with expectations. Plus, they have to make a game. I just think that it's going to have to be on something that has all these tools to where everything can be automated as much as possible to create a giant world that doesn't seem computer generated. And I think we're on the cusp of doing it, where it could make us a building, populate every single interior, have it to where you can go in and then put AI in every single interior that has their own storyline somehow. You could do that with AI and make something that's halfway realistic. I just think that there's going to be a game that comes out with that type of a thing where you just go and you feel like kind of like Second Life, right? Where you just go and you do whatever you want. And the AI kind of adapts to you. That's going to be a super game. That would be the most awesome game I can think of. But you know what? I think technology-wise, we're still like 10 years before they can come up with, but probably before we start seeing something like that. I think in 10 years, though, the technology is right here, but I think it'll probably take 10 years for it to really develop.
So the update is out now. It is on Steam. Looking at my queue, 43.5 gigabytes. So a very large update. It's literally out on everything that's going on right now. Just a real quick look before we move on, Brian, at the player count. A little bit of a jump with this new update. About 18,000 people playing it right now. 20,000 to 24-hour peak, but obviously way down from where it was at the launch, which was just over 1 million players at one point or another, as Cyberpunk is going to try and win some of this audience back. I will jump into it. I'll set the update before I go to bed tonight, have that install, and I will jump back into Cyberpunk. I'm pretty sure I remember where I am. I'll have to relearn the controls, but I'll jump back in and see how everything
and
goes.
I completed one of the storylines. I wonder if it'd be worth starting a fresh one and just kind of going from the beginning. Now that I know, first of all, how the characters work, how the adding, I don't even remember what they're called anymore, but the perks and all that. I think it would be beneficial for me to almost start over, because then I know what I'm doing. I would actually be upgrading my character in the time I'm supposed to, and I'd probably see more places that I didn't see because I was staying and doing things too long, in one place for too long. But I enjoyed the game, but I just felt like it didn't keep my attention enough like GTA did with the story. The story didn't seem real to me. It didn't pull me in. I just, that kind of sucked. I was hoping it'd be something that would pull me in and just keep me going, because Red Dead did, GTA did with a lot of their games. That kind of style I love playing, but this one, the story, I think there was just too much disruption of the story not continuing. They need to figure out how to make the story continue, where kind of like they did with GTA. You feel like the story continues when you get back on that quest, and it's all natural. This just didn't feel natural.
Well, you can check out all of the updates on their website. You can head on over to infectionpodcast.com. We will have all of the latest details on that. All right, now that we got that out of the way, big update, big story there, Brian. Where do we go next?
All right. Well, first of all, let's talk some things Daybreak, because that's kind of where our start was.
Yeah.
They weren't called Daybreak at the time, but this is there's been some news, and I think there's a little speculation here. So I figured I'd do a couple separate articles, and then I think we can see a connection. So Lord of the Rings Online, right? That they have activated a new website. It isn't Lord of the Rings Online. Doesn't Daybreak run that? Right? From what I remember, they run Lord of the Rings Online.
Yes, sir.
Well, they have a whole new website. They're tweaking their 32-bit build, and then it was announced that the Lord of the Rings and Hobbit films and gaming rights are going to be auctioned. So I'm kind of curious. All of a sudden, they have a new website, and the rights to be able to make those kind of games are going to be auctioned. I'm wondering if we're going to start seeing some movement, and if this means anything for the Lords of the Rings Online. Because they're still going strong. EverQuest is putting in 64-bit servers this week, finally, and they're going to have a 64-bit client next week. So I mean that's my very first online game I ever really played that was serious, and the thing's still going. This is 22 years later, I think 22, 23 years later. Mm-hmm. So something's happening. We're just going to keep an eye on it. But I thought that was interesting. If they're maybe going to make another game. The timing of this, it's just kind of strange that they're starting to tweak their site and change things right at the same time as there's an announcement that the rights for it are going to be auctioned. So we will keep an eye on that. They're keeping those games alive still, which surprises me. Let's talk a minute about... Oh, go ahead.
I'd like to talk about Lost Ark for a minute, if that's all right.
Yeah, for sure.
We covered a little bit about it last week. It was scheduled to launch last Thursday on the 11th. And boy, was I, I was doing my thing, browsing Twitter, as I tend to do a lot. And this tweet came out last Thursday morning at 11 o'clock, last Friday, the day the game was supposed to launch. And it says, unfortunately, due to a development issue, the launch is delayed. We hope to have this issue resolved in a matter of hours. Your patience is appreciated, and we will keep you updated soon. That was from the official Play Lost Ark Twitter account. they did resolve the issue relatively soon. The game did come out on Saturday, on the 12th, I believe is when it officially hit the various stores. So a very last-minute technical delay, probably something to do server-related or network-related would be my guess, Brian, because they were able to resolve it so rapidly. I can't imagine it was anything but maybe issues with servers not spinning up, so they just had to delay and release delay the release because of that. Do you have any insight in what could cause a delay to last less than 24 hours?
It could have been DNS. I mean, there could be some things. You know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah,
it could have been that they had to change DNS. And they're like, well, we got to change it, and it'll take up to 24 hours to populate. Could be something stupid like that. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
There's those are the type of things where it's kind of out of your control. Some things you can fast track and be like, all right, we can do it faster. But with DNS or something like that, sometimes you just have to make a change. There could have been something that they didn't do right, or they needed to add more servers, and that who knows. But I've heard a lot of positive things about it as far as people that are playing it. There's a lot of players. It's kind of more of an anime Japanese style game, which I'm not really into that whole style. I mean, I'm not going to judge the whole thing by that, but it seems a pretty heavy anime kind of a feel. And is it like the 2D? Is that what they call it? It's kind of like a 2D side view, or it's a weird.
They call that cell shading.
Or 2.5D or something.
Yeah.
No, but like the angle of it. It's like 2.5D where it's kind of locked. I remember if that's where they lock you into that view where it's kind of at an angle. So
yeah,
it looks like an interesting game. I don't know that I'll play it though, but it is definitely a lot of people play. I don't know if you have the numbers for it, but there are quite a few people.
I do
talk about that.
I mean, come on, Brian. They got about 875,000 people playing right now. The 24-hour peak coming in at 1.119 million, and the all-time peak, the day that the game launched, coming in at 1.325 million. The fact that now the game has only been out 3 days, so let's manage expectations. 4 days. But the fact that right now there is nearly 900,000 people playing the game, which, by the way, puts it very securely in the top space of games that are being played on Steam right now, is pretty good. I did jump over to the Steam page, but I did notice something interesting, Brian. Out of all of the reviews, only 67 of them are positive. Now, this is only 71,000 reviews. The game's got 900,000 people playing right now.
Earlier today, they said there were more than 4.7 million new registered users in the West in just 3 days. So, I mean, they got a lot of players.
So, the reviews do seem to be a bit mixed. I'm not going to read through any of them here. Some complaints about server transfers. And, of course,
Kotaku's complaining that the females feel a decade out of date because they're wearing short shorts.
Are you being serious?
Kotaku's angry. Yes, they don't like the depictions of the females in Lost Ark because they kind of look like Lara Croft and Tomb Raiders type of a look. They said the free-to-play action MMORPG forces women to wear heels and has gender-locked classes.
Oh, Jesus Christ! No!
I can't believe I had to be a boy or a girl.
Oh my God! Wow, that is that's quite the headline there from Kotaku. I do. Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
I got one other. I guess this is the last quote. I think it's just the last quote of this. Okay, well, this is the last quote of this section. It says, "Other players have pointed out how hard it is as a female character in Lost Ark to find clothing and armor that actually, cover your body." Which this is a Japanese anime style game. This is what you're applying American ideals, especially Kotaku American ideals, to a Japanese. This is just how they do it. I mean, you can complain about it all day long, but that's the style. Now, this is not made, but they're going with that style, so they're matching it.
Well, Brian,
this is just how it kind of works in MMORPGs. Well, my wife and I were actually talking about this exact thing a couple days ago.
If you need any more insight, Brian, this is the author of the article. If that doesn't greatly explain, this is their
helps.
Twitter picture. So I mean, nothing better than terms of virtue signaling than that. But one of the big concerns in the reviews, and I think why the reviews are only at 67% positive right now, is servers, which unfortunately it doesn't seem to matter. And it doesn't matter how well you are ready for your scale or for your launch.
Yep.
The idea that you can handle 1 million people all trying to hit your server at the same time is just not the case. And MMO, massively overpowered, massively OP.com has an update on this, and they say that Lost Ark promises to manage server limits and queues as over 1 million players arrive for the free-to-play launch. It says the devs at Amazon Games have released an additional update on that matter, promising that the team is, quote, carefully lifting character creation limits on servers to allow new players to join servers that they may have not been able to previously, and that they're closely monitoring server populations and queue times so that these character creation limits may return as queues begin to grow. They do note that server caps change frequently, so players are being asked to restart their client to see updated server information. One of the other big concerns, Brian, is no server transfers in the game right now. I don't know if that is something they intend on adding, but that seems to be one of the, in scrolling through some of the reviews before the show, it seemed to be complaints about issues getting on and then a big complaint about server transfers. If you want to go and team up with your buddies, unless you're going to create a new character, you have no way to do that as of right now.
Yep. And I don't know. I'm trying to figure out if I'm going to even bother trying to play this game at all, because it looks like it's an MMORPG that is going to be a time sink. I think if I'm going to play an MMORPG, I'd probably play one of the other ones. But I think it seems like they're just kind of tossing out a number of styles, tossing out a number of different types, trying to see what sticks, see what people take to. Because if they can get this, tons of people keep playing it, keep this one going, roll down New World and kind of start phasing that one out slowly over time, less servers, which is what they're exactly, we'll talk about that a little bit later. But I think that's where this is going, where either they're just putting out a number of these because they want to do something that's going to compete with like WoW or really WoW. I mean, there's still not an MMORPG out there that really competes in the same space that's taking the cake. And that game is so old. I think that they're just feeling like if they can get that, and plus everybody's kind of evacuating WoW, Blizzard, those type of things. I think they're hoping to grab those prior to maybe Microsoft fixing some things in a year here and getting people to start coming back, or putting it on the Game Pass, and all of a sudden you have tons of people playing WoW. That's going to kill your chances. So they have a year here to really kind of figure out what works. If they can get those people, and they'll transition from all the people that feel like they've lost their MMORPG home.
Well, if you do feel that you have lost your MMORPG home, I'll remind you that Lost Ark is free to play, a free-to-play MMO. It is available on Steam or on the Amazon Game website, so you can go ahead and check that out. This is arguably one of the coolest stories that, Brian, that we have probably ever covered after nearly 370 episodes of this show. We've covered a lot about the Steam Deck. It is starting to ship out to people. They are getting their hands on them. Videos making their way online, articles. This is absolutely astonishing. A report out that Valve is going to be partnering with a company known as iFixit, which makes computer and small device phone and tablet screwdrivers, pry tools, guides on taking these devices apart. Valve
they do really good videos.
They do phenomenal videos. Valve is actually going to partner with them to sell Steam Deck replacement parts. So Valve is fully embracing the idea that not only is this your device if you're going to spend $400 on it, but because it's your device, if something goes wrong, maybe you've got a problem with a component and it's out of warranty. Brian, maybe you spill water and completely destroy one of your joysticks. Well, instead of having a 400-pound paperweight on your hands, looks like you'll be able to go to iFixit potentially and buy some of these parts with guides verified by Valve to do these replacements. This is phenomenal. The joysticks
Well,
are
and take a look-
removable with no soldering. You can do the whole disassembly with just a Phillips
Can you pull up that
screwdriver.
that X-ray that they have of it? Because I think that that's really important because it kind of shows how they built it.
Yeah.
And you can tell it's very modular. I think if PlayStation, or if Sony would have made this, if some other companies would have made this, they would have made it to where there's one main board along the whole bottom. You know, a main motherboard that then everything is pretty much put into, where it makes it very difficult to fix and replace. Here it sounds like they've made it modular, and then they'll have parts to where, okay, my fan has gone out. I can easily change out that fan with a couple of bolts, you know, getting the back end off. They've got boards here that are doing each. You can tell there's the main processor board, there's drives, there's a couple different things in here. I think that is something that will be fairly easy to fix. It doesn't look like anything's too crazy or glued down in there. So that gives me a lot of hope. Just that X-ray alone gives me a lot of hope that it's kind of like fixing a laptop. I mean, it is. You can fix most modern laptops, and they have parts that you can pull out and do a lot of stuff like this. I think they treated it like that.
Yeah, and I did note, or rather, they note in this article that the joysticks are removable with no soldering, so you're not going to have to desolder. So if your joystick has a problem, you can do that. The entire assembly is with a Phillips screwdriver and a plastic splunger to pull the screen off. The components are labeled particularly well, which makes reassembly a lot easier. And replacing the battery is technically possible. While it's not the easiest thing in the world, it is technically possible. I think it was a Gamer's Nexus video that I watched where he did a full takedown of it, a full teardown of the device, or at least a pretty close to a full teardown, to do some thermal testing. And even he was unbelievably shocked with how this device was set up and how everything was labeled on the PCB. It would say what it was that was, and that, Brian, this is just not common when we're having this argument over right to repair and companies saying, you bought a $1,500 phone. Oh, you want to replace the battery? Fuck you. How about that? That's a pretty good solution. Meanwhile, Valve's over here selling a $400 device, and they're not only encouraging people to repair stuff, they're going to sell the parts themselves to do it. That's phenomenal.
Yep. And that's one big difference. I mean, even in the cell phone market, like this is a OnePlus. I noticed a huge difference in the OnePlus versus like there's one where I had a battery explode. And my wife's probably told you the story when we were in Vegas or something. But the thing was glued together. It was a Samsung, and they literally glued everything inside together so you could not repair it. Then you go to a OnePlus where the parts are separate. You can pull the screen out, you can pull the boards out, you can pull everything apart fairly easily in this and put it back together. Looking at the way that X-ray looks, it looks like that's exactly how they made it, and that makes me happy. J-Rock in chat, he says, yeah, it looks nice to see the screws on the X-ray give some hope for repair. They definitely made it with repair in mind, and I think that should be the standard going forward. Hopefully, people seeing, hey, I can actually change out parts on this. It's built for me to keep, and not throw away or, because what warranty is still active when you want to have this thing fixed? So I think that this is hopefully the kind of the standard, and I wanted it to where you own your games, and I wanted it to where you own your hardware when you go and pick them up from the store. And I think that this device hopefully is the step that kind of gets it to more of an open platform, because that's been something that I think is becoming a bigger issue that we're going to be running into, is all these closed platforms.
Yeah, and this is, Valve doesn't often make big news because, let's be honest, they don't really do a whole hell of a lot. They're a marketplace for video games. They do it very well, and they're not a big... There's not a lot of bombastic news out of it. They've kind of tiptoed into the gaming market with they released that card game a couple of years ago. But this, Brian, really does set a big standard. We're not talking about some one-off Chinese company that's importing some devices like the Neo, whatever it's called, the not the Neo Geo, but the Neo Neo or whatever it is into the U.S. market and trying to flood it. This is a consumer device targeted very specifically for a subset of the gaming industry with this modularity, this right to repair. And Brian, in the future, what about updating the GPU and CPU? If this thing gets out of date, you have the base unit, and maybe you spend $150 on upgrading the it's the same unit. It's that AMD unit with the discriminant GPU built into it. Some of this stuff looks like it's completely possible. And this device is already going to have huge modding support. And with this, it's going to be 10 times better than we even thought.
And pull up that image because you can see exactly where the CPU is. And that board, so you can see the main fan in the center. And then there's a copper, kind of like a flattened copper tube that was like a hollow tube that's flattened. That's going from that, carrying, and it's got, kind of like an air channel in it. That's going to the CPU. So that's transferring that heat to the fan and drawing the heat out. Well, that board, you can see there's that square board. That's pretty much the motherboard right there. That's the right of that fan up and down. Replace that board and you could have a very different unit. If they made it modular enough to where you can just swap out that board, that's a whole nother CPU. That's a whole nother platform. They could make it to where you can keep upgrading this. You could have it to where you can swap out the screen. And if there's something better, clear, fast, better in how it displays and more accurately or brighter, then they could easily do that if they made this modular. And with all those screws, it looks like they did. I would rather see where instead of us replacing the whole, because I can't imagine trying to take apart my, my other little portable gaming device. I mean, my Switch, it would probably void the warranty immediately. I mean, those things are not made to take apart, not made in any way to upgrade or to customize in any way. With this, if they wanted to, you could have aftermarket parts because they're not tied to the device. That's the thing. This is an example of a device that a manufacturer could emulate and make another one similar to this and have it have the exact same software. So they don't care if they're not as tied to making sure no one else does anything like it. They're saying make something like this. They're telling you to.
Well,
so I think it's cool. I think this hopefully will be the way that if they create an example and people really adapt to it, it's going to be hard to go back when you realize, oh, I got the Switch and the thing, if it breaks, I'm done. Well, with this, you can keep upgrading it and carrying it with you.
That's a key thing to know, and we haven't really covered it in the recent weeks. The idea with the Steam Deck is they're going to make that OS available to other hardware manufacturers to make
so
their
they can
own
make
devices.
One of these.
Well, and
if one wanted to make a super modular version, they could.
Or
and there's your CPU upgrade. You know what I'm saying?
On the flip side, if a company wanted to come in and make one of these devices for $199 that isn't modular, where everything is soldered to the PCB and doesn't have some of those features, they could do that same thing, and you know what you're getting. Okay,
they'll have the same thing. It'll have the same features. It may just not do them as well.
Yeah, because it's cheaper to mass produce it without that modularity and have things soldered. So this is going to be very interesting to see how this all folds out once more people get this thing into their hands.
Yeah.
But the fact that Valve is already, the device isn't even fully available yet, and they're already embracing not only the third-party community, but the right-to-repair community is absolutely phenomenal. They need to be commended for those efforts for sure.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's talk really quickly. So do you want to talk some Microsoft news before we roll on out of here, or do you have a preference?
I have steamrolled you on topics today, so whatever you'd like to talk about, I'll throw to you.
Okay, we got this. All right. So first of all, let me make a few mentions. Factorio, they're having a new expansion come out, and I'm wondering, are they going to have a sale? Like usually when you put out a DLC, you have a sale. I've been waiting to buy this game.
Yeah.
They said they're never putting it on sale. I said the day they put it on sale, I will buy the game. They're getting ready to do an expansion of the game that they say is larger than the main game. If they don't put this thing on sale, I'm going to be so annoyed because I'm not going to pay full price for this game, and especially now they're going to make it full price plus the DLC. Give me a discount with the DLC. There we go.
There you go. Sale achieved. Ladies and gentlemen, we did it.
Then I'll have my sale and I'll not be breaking my promise to myself.
There you go.
Because that's the only reason I'm doing it. Okay, so let's go and talk. And one thing Nvidia, I'm just going to throw some of the things I want to mention, is now worth more than Meta, which is Facebook's parent company. Nvidia is now, because Meta just tanked. Did you see in the last couple of days what their stock prices did?
No.
Or the past week? Meta's stock price has gone in half, like at least half, with some things happening. They have tanked on stock price. Nvidia is now, I think, number 7 as far as like overall or something like that. They have passed them. So I was kind of surprised about that because you don't think Nvidia. I mean, of course, they're pumping out video cards and everything like crazy, but
Oh yeah,
It's
you're
now
right.
worth
Yeah.
more than Meta.
Their stock was at $323 in early February. It's now trading at $221. I mean, it's lost literally $100 worth of value.
Over 30%. Yeah, over
Yeah,
30%
that's
of
pretty
their
shocking.
market value.
I did not
So
know.
that's happening. I thought people might find that interesting. All right, let's talk Microsoft here really quick.
Sure.
One thing that's kind of related to some things we were just talking about is they're trying to come up with some standards that they're going to follow when it comes to their app stores. Because, buying these companies, you then see Sony buying some companies, and we're getting, okay, who's going to get exclusive, who's not. And so ahead of regulation and things, Microsoft has kind of made a set of standards, principles that they're going to follow. So I wanted to cover a few of these. First of all, accountability, quality, safety, security, and privacy. They're going through some standard ones here. They're going to say we will enable all developers to access our app store as long as they meet reasonable and transparent standards for quality and safety. So they're not going to be, that's actually something bigger I think than you realize. Not for politics. Now they could still squeeze politics under safety because they love to do that somehow. But they're saying that as long as you meet the standards and safety qualities, of that, you'll be able to be on this app store.
Mhm.
Which is totally in a reference to probably some of the regulation that might be coming because of the very disingenuous things that they did with a lot of people. And not just Microsoft, I'm talking Google, Apple, a lot of these places that were very selective or were removing people from the store based on the politics that, just because they didn't vote for the person they thought they should.
Yeah.
That shouldn't be happening in a free market like this. They said we'll continue to protect the consumers and gamers who use our app store, ensuring the developers meet our standards for security. We'll continue to respect the privacy of consumers in our app stores, giving them control to manage their data and how it's used. So giving a little more granularity on what marketing data, things like that. So then the accountability will be hold our own apps to the same standards as we hold competing apps. Okay. We will not use any non-public information or data from our app store to compete with developers' apps. This is a big issue. Google's been running into this where they're using information that only they have access to because of their placement in the market to then have an advantage. You can argue whether or not that's fair or not, but they're going to try to make it to where their insider information, I mean, they have government contracts. They've got all kinds of stuff that could be considered insider information. So they're going to try to keep that. They say they're not going to, but honestly, you can't guarantee that's not going to happen, but they're going to do their best to make that not happen. Fairness and transparency. They're going to treat apps equally in our app store without unreasonable preferencing or ranking of our apps or our business partners. That is huge. Apple does this a ton. Google does this a ton. All those things you see on the front store are hand curated. And
absolutely.
They said that this is going to be what they did it. Well, I know because they did it with our extension for Google Plus that we made. Hangout Canopy, we were on the front page of the Google Chrome App Store for that. And it was all worked out beforehand and everything was done a certain way. Like it is definitely, there are only certain apps. And if you remember, what's that app where it's like the jump scare game, where you're the night watch in the
Slender
place
Man,
like stuffed bears. No, there's like the stuffed animals that are trying to get you.
You're talking about
Friday Night at Freddy's.
Friday Night at Freddy's, yeah.
Yeah, that that one, because the developer said he voted for Trump, started getting so much pressure. They started pulling his games from things because of the people did not feel safe. Come on. Now, if you can stop that BS from happening, there you go. Because that's not fair. Is that fair to that guy just because he voted for the current, what was the current president of the United States?
Yes,
you're pulling him from your app store?
That is fair.
I mean,
absolutely. Evil.
Well,
man.
That's the kind of stuff that's been happening.
Yeah, he needs to be taught. Needs to be taught his lesson for executing his right to vote.
Yes. We will be transparent about rules for promotion and marketing in our app store and apply these consistently and objectively. They're stating the things that have not been happening. They are saying, we're going to start doing these things. These things have not been happening. We have had the weirdest, because of election and politics, I've never seen anything like this where companies are saying half of America is the enemy. They may be not seeing it in those words, but when you say you don't have the right to be on our app store because of you believe you voted for our current president of the United States, That is insane. Insanity. And they pass it off as normal. I mean, come on. Anyways, let's keep going. We will not require developers or App Store to use our payment system to process in-app payments. Boom. There's an answer to the whole Epic versus Apple versus, whoever else they wanted to. You don't have to use a required payment vendor in their App Store. That's what that whole trial has started on. That's huge. So they're setting a standard for their marketplace where these companies, if they want to make money and do all these little in-app purchases, that's not costing Microsoft or Google or Apple a bunch more money, usually, depending on how they're doing it, to have all those things in the game. Yet they're taking 30% of a virtual item that's only in that game. You know what I'm saying? Odd. And I don't think we've discussed that plenty. We will not require developers in our App Store to provide more favorable terms in our App Store than in other app stores, which is exactly what Google does. They say you have to do certain things. That's why various things have been pulled from their platform, because they put Roku, for instance. They put all these stipulations on their app. We want special treatment. We want special things to be done for our Google YouTube app. No, everybody's equal. It doesn't matter how big you are. We will not disadvantage developers if they choose to use a payment processing system other than ours. If they offer different terms and conditions in other app stores, or if they offer different terms and conditions in other app stores. What you do in our marketplace is your business. It's our business together. What you do in other marketplaces is not our business. If you want to sell it for half price there, sell it for half price there. If you want to double the price there, just double the price there. It doesn't matter. And it says we will not prevent developers from communicating directly with their customers through their apps for legitimate business purposes, such as pricing terms and products or service offerings. Yeah, it sounds normal. They will continue to enable developers to choose whether they want to deliver their apps for Windows through our App Store or someone else's store, or sideloaded directly from the internet. We will continue to give developers timely access to information, interoperability, and we'll enable Windows users to use alternative app stores and third-party apps included by changing default settings in appropriate categories. So they're not locking you into the Windows Store.
Gotcha.
This sounds fair. As long as they stick to this, I wish all of them did this. If all of them came out with this, we would have a night and day difference, I think, in our app stores and what developers are doing in those app stores.
Completely agree.
So
that's good stuff.
This is a standard. They've set it. I think it's great. This is what people, I think, have been asking for.
Absolutely.
It gives the developers a ton more flexibility to where, because for some things it doesn't make sense. It doesn't take resources. The 30% fee does not make sense on some of those items. It just doesn't. If it's something that is something for the main purchase of the game, great, lock that in there. Put some restrictions on how they do that if you want. But it sounds like they know they're going to make money. I'm sure there'll be some people that kind of game the system a little bit more than others, but really the person who bought the game, how are you gaming the system? They purchased the game already. It doesn't matter what they do with it afterwards.
30% on a $4 DLC is a very tough burden and a very tough situation to deal with.
Or even a virtual item, like a fake wristband, whatever. It doesn't matter what you're getting. To charge 30% on a virtual item that costs no money physically other than the development of it, and once they're doing it, there's no actual cost other than the fees and selling it. That just doesn't make any sense that you're locking them into that 30% fee on every single one of those items. It's just, this is going to make people race to here. I think that you're going to see something very similar, or at least a statement probably by Epic, saying some very similar things. They have a different kind of a marketplace, but I think you'll see Epic, which was probably already doing a lot of this. You'll see these guys. What about the other two? Are we going to see it? I don't have any confidence. I can't imagine Google really bending other than what they have to do. And I don't really see Apple bending other than what they have to do because of the court. They're already fighting that. So obviously they don't like this because this is what the court's telling them to do. Some of this is pretty much what they came to. Offer alternate payment system. They hate that. They're trying to reverse it. Well, Microsoft fully embraced it and says, I think they'll be very successful for it.
Well, and it'll be interesting to see if some of that attitude and mentality shifts the whole narrative and the whole policy for everybody else, potentially. All right, Brian, we are a little over time, so I'll ask you to let our wonderful audience know where they can find you on the internet.
Yeah, if you want to find me at Brian Aldridge on Gab, Parler, and Getter. And of course, my blog, biteoftech.com. And that's with an I, of course. And then if you go to infectionpodcast.com, just go to the upper right-hand side, join our server on Discord. If you want to submit news topics, you want to communicate with any of us, want to meet some of the other people that watch and interact with the podcast, or maybe you want to play some Ark or something like that. Just join. It's a free app, web-based app, desktop app, mobile app, really easy to use. If you want to watch the show live, you can do that through Twitch, YouTube, BitChute, and DLive. Now, we do those live and have recordings after the fact, so that's one way to get it. If you want to listen to the show, we can't do that because during the live show, but you can do that if you go and listen to it after the fact, the lower right-hand side. Nick, you got something else going here.
Oh, I see that
on the
yes.
screen. And then if you go to the particular episode, while you're listening, you can see all the different links and notes that we refer to throughout the episode, and then you can listen and follow along. So I encourage you to do that, and you'll get a lot more out of the show. Yeah, I don't know. I just wow, the news that we've been hearing lately. I think I'm really excited to kind of see where everything's going, and we'll see with some of this game store stuff. I think that it's kind of interesting to see that fight where you now have a line in the sand where you've got Apple and Google on one side, and you got Microsoft and Epic on the other. I think we're in for some interesting news in the coming year.
I feel like maybe it's before my time, but I've seen the videos of the 1980s and 1990s tag team wrestling matches. Brian, will you? Get them all in the ring, and obviously all of them, Goliaths in their industries, and to see if just the, for lack of a better term, peer pressure can force and change some of that.
Big boys are doing it. You're gonna follow suit. I mean, Epic and Microsoft are two of the big boys in this whole scene.
Yeah, we know.
Google, we know they don't like to bend.
No, they don't. But we know how bad PR can look and does look when it gets to a certain level, and I'm confident that everybody is patiently waiting and watching that. And then the same thing. You can bring it over to the conversation about Valve and the right to repair and the usability of the Steam Deck. It's the same thing. I think it puts.
We need
Nintendo
to own our things again. We don't own our things. It's so frustrating.
Absolutely. Well, Brian, as always, thank you very much. Appreciate your time, and we will see you next Tuesday for episode 371. Alrighty, folks. Thank you for joining us as well. As Brian mentioned, you can check out his socials and stuff. You can visit mine as well by heading on over to my website, nickcraig.com or nickcraig.net. If you missed any portion of today's show, if you want to check out that Cyberpunk trailer or the TLDR on all of their updates for their 1.5 update, head on over to our website, infectionpodcast.com. Thank you so much for joining us, everybody. Have a great week. We'll see you next time.